Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to show you all the basic things that you need to do when you're setting up your document for your Unit 3 Digital Media Skills exams. So I've got a copy of the paper here just so you can see what it is I'm going to be referring to. I'm going to try and do videos for not all, but most of the things that are on here, particularly the ones that have got like an actual specific technique you've got to do. So this first one is just going to be this bit here about how you need to set up your how-to guide, but then also I'm going to show you how to export it in an interactive PDF format as well. I'm not going to bother showing you any suitable alternatives because unless you're using, something like I don't know, page transitions or embedding video or audio, you're not going to use anything other than interactive PDF. All right, if we were doing something like that, we might use EPUBs, but we're not going to bother with them because they're a bit crap. So we're going to start off by showing you how to set up the page specifically to these dimensions as well. Probably more for this one here, 6 sides of A5, just because I think the majority of you are choosing this option for your exam anyway, so there's no point in doing this one. But the basic principle of it is the same. It's just a different page size. So don't forget as well, when you're doing all these things, you need to make sure you're regularly doing screenshots so you can use them for your production diary as well. That's going to be a really important thing because your production diary, don't forget, is worth 1/3 of your overall grade. It's worth 20 marks out of 60, so it's a big deal, and it can drag grades up, but it can also knock them down at the same time. So my InDesign will look a little bit different to yours because mine's a 2023 version, but for the most part it's going to be pretty much the same. So don't forget, we're going to be using InDesign to make your how-to guides. But some people might think, I might use Photoshop, but you need to be using InDesign for this. So I'm going to go to InDesign, I'm going to go to New File, and this should give me a little setup option where I can choose my settings for what I want. Now obviously the first thing you do is just choose what format you want your work to be in. Now because this is going to be an interactive PDF and something that's going to be used online, I'm going to choose web for my options there. Now obviously the problem you've got with this straight away is that you've lost the right page dimensions we need, because if we see there it says at least 6 sides of A5. So we need to make sure we've got the right dimensions we need for A5. Now if you can't remember what those dimensions are, if you go back to print, you should see, there we go, A5, so 148 by 210 millimeters. So before I do anything, I want to make sure my unit of measurement has been changed to millimeters. Alright, don't make the mistake of not changing this, because otherwise you'll make your canvas size either too big or too small. So I'm going to set my height to 210 millimeters, and I'm going to set my width to 148 millimeters. I want to make sure that I have portrait orientation. That should change anyway, but because you type it in the dimensions yourself, but just in case, just make sure you've got the portrait orientation chosen. Unless you want landscape, we'll swap it around for you, but I think again most of you probably end up doing portrait, but it doesn't really matter to be honest. Pages, we want 6. Pages, we want 6 of those. And what we don't want to do, and I'll explain this afterwards, is we want to make sure that facing pages is unticked. Alright, so make sure that that is not ticked. Start on page number 1. Columns is going to be up to you. I'm going to set mine for 2 just because these are A5 dimensions, which is not that big, and I think if I have 3 columns on there it'd probably be a bit cramped. I'm going to set my gutter to 3 millimeters. Now again, the gutters, the margins and the bleeds and all that sort of stuff, what dimensions you use are going to be completely up to you, but what I would suggest you do, just to make your designs look neat and tidy and consistent, is have every dimension here the same size as your column gutter. Alright, so I'm going to set all of these to 3 millimeters. So set all these down to 3, move all these up to 3, and then move all these up to 3 as well. If you notice as well, by the way, that when I'm changing one of them, all of the other lines are changing as well. So make sure you've got the little chain clicked for that, or otherwise, you know, it doesn't do it all at once. So that's what I'm going to go for my measurements. Again, these bits at the top here, you'll probably all use the same dimensions for those ones, but all these ones underneath here are up to you. This is what I'm going to use. It doesn't really matter. Well, it does matter, but it's, you know, as long as you know why you're using things this way and why you're using these measurements, that's absolutely fine. It's completely up to you. So when I've got all that sorted, I'm going to press create, and then what should happen is, there we go, I've got all my 6 pages there. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the reason why I have not chosen facing pages for this is because it makes one of the other parts of the exam criteria is, where's it gone? This one here, original icons that appear with every page. This makes that task infinitely easier. So I would always recommend unticking facing pages, because otherwise doing this part of the brief will probably make you have a breakdown. So I would stick to having non-facing pages. And even from a design point of view, you don't really need to have facing pages because you're not making double page spreads. So you can see there you've got your nice margins around the outside. Don't forget, text should not cross those margins. And you've got your safety bleeds around the edge as well for any overflow you've got with things like pictures or background textures. That's basically all you need to know for setting up pages. If you want to make any changes or you do it wrong, you don't need to go back and start again. You've got all different options up here where you can go back to your document setup there. So you can go back and add and change things here, which is a bit easier for you rather than starting again. So if you do need to do that, go to File, Document Setup. Alright, you can even do things like adding pages as well up here if you need to add pages. So I can add another one on there if you want to, because don't forget the brief says at least 6 sides of A5. Okay, so you're going to have 7 or 8, absolutely fine. That's it, pretty basic on that one. That's how you're going to set up your documents. So it should look like this when it's finished. Yeah, basically it is. It's pretty easy on that one. Any questions, you know where I am. Other than that, I'll catch you next time. TRC